Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the graphing calculator to solve a variety of functions that you'll see in this course. So I'm using the TI-84 calculator, and the thing that I'm going to focus on in this video is the importance of putting parentheses around certain parts of a function to make sure that we maintain order of operations. And that's important because even though our calculator can perform a lot of amazing calculations for us, if we don't type the function incorrectly, the calculator might give us an answer, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that answer is the correct answer. So what are some things that we should pay attention to? Here are a couple of examples that will work out together. You can find these problems on page 28 of your textbook. So let's take a look at S2. Here we're given a function, and we're asked to evaluate it when x is 4.3. So that means wherever you see x, we're going to substitute it with 4.3. So let me just rewrite this with 4.3 in for x before we start typing it into our calculator. So let me do all the substitutions. Okay, so now I'm ready to evaluate this. I'm going to go to my calculator and I'm going to start typing in everything just like how I have written it on my paper here. So let's do that. I'm going to put in the parentheses, plus 4.3, raise it to the 1.2, and then raise that to 4.3 plus 3.8. Now, when I press enter, the calculator does give me an answer. The question is this answer correct? So if we take a look at what we've told our calculator to evaluate, this is what we've told the calculator to do. We said, take 4.3, raise it to 1.2, that gives you an answer, a value. Take that value, add 3 to it, that gives you another number. And then raise that to 4.3, that gives you another number. And then finally take that answer and then add 3.8 to it, which gives us 11,276. So if you think about what we've actually typed in and then take a look at the actual function, I hope that you can see that those two are not the same thing, right? The actual function here is telling us to evaluate inside the parentheses first. So take 4.3, raise it to 1.2, add 3 to it. And then whatever that answer is, you're going to raise that whole thing to this exponent. So this power right here, let me highlight it. We're going to raise the whole thing to this. Okay? But notice that what we typed in here, it doesn't say that. So how do we fix that? Anytime you see an exponent that has more than one term in it, what do I mean by more than one term? So for example, 3 is a term. X to the 1.2 is a term. X is another term. 3.8 is another term. So notice that the exponent here has 2 terms in it. It's got x and 3.8. So anytime you have an exponent that has more than one term, it is really important that you put parentheses. Let me go ahead and use a different color here. It's really important that you put parentheses around the entire exponent to maintain orders of operation. So same thing here. When I type this into my calculator, I want to make sure that I put parentheses around the entire power to keep that together. So what I'm really wanting to evaluate is I want to take 4.3, add it to 3.8. Whatever that answer is, that's what I'm going to raise this entire base to, not just to the 4.3 and then adding 3.8 at the end. So if we go back and we correct this on our calculator, I'm going to actually press second enter, and it's going to bring back the most recent work that I did on my calculator. So notice my cursor is blinking, which means I can go back and edit what I have already typed. So now I need to go in and fix this and put parentheses. So to insert a parentheses, what you're going to do is you're going to press second, and then this button here, where in blue you'll see INS, which means insert. I'm going to insert a pair of an open parentheses, and then I got to make sure I close it. Okay, now when we press enter, let's see what value we get. So notice that we get a completely different answer here. When we put the parentheses around that exponent, we end up with a number that is much larger than when we left the parentheses out. So actual value of this function when we evaluate it at 4.3 is actually this big number here, 42943,441. Okay, so 42 million versus 11,000 makes a huge difference, right? Okay, let's take a look at another function that is very similar to S2. It also has an exponent, but this time I want you to notice that the base is this letter E. I know it looks really funny, E, but E is actually an irrational number like pi. So it does have an actual value. For example, pi, we remember from the first time that we were introduced to pi that it's an irrational number that's approximately 3.14. And in fact, we can go to our calculator and evaluate pi. So I'm just pressing second and then the caret here. Enter, and it gives us an approximation for pi, 3.141592, etc. Okay? Well, again, E is an irrational number like pi, and it has a value. So if you press second and then the division symbol, E is right above it, and then press enter, you'll get the approximation for E, which is 2.718. We're going to use, actually we're going to see E in a lot of the functions that we work with throughout this course. So make sure you know where it's located on your calculator. Now let's evaluate this function, and let's just do C of 0. We'll do just C of 0. So if I want to evaluate this at 0, that means wherever I see T, I'm going to substitute it with 0. And I'm just going to write out exactly how I'm going to type this into my calculator. Okay? And just like in the previous example, it is so important that you remember to put parentheses around your entire exponent. Because if you don't put parentheses around the exponent, you're not keeping order of operations and you'll get a completely different answer. So let's go ahead and type this into our graphing calculator. So that's 0.1 plus 2.78 times E, so second division symbol. Raise it to the, again, so important to put parentheses around this. And then the other thing that I want to bring to your attention is this negative sign. This is negative 0.37. So you want to use this button down here for the negative sign. Don't use the subtraction symbol. It'll give you an error. So I'm going to use this button down here for negative 0.37 times 0. Close the parentheses, and we get 2.88. So that gives us 2.88. Now, if you want to test it out, try it without the parentheses and see if you get the same answer, and you'll see that you won't get the same answer. So again, really important that you use the parentheses. Okay, watch the next video for solutions to S-16 and then S-20 and S-21.